Shabbat Shalom. It's my pleasure to welcome up our Rabbinic Intern, Hebrew College Rabbinic Intern, Deborah Anstandig. Hebrew College does definitely want to be in there. They need that. You should all make sure you send your donations to Hebrew College. There you go. We've taken care of that. But I just want to say a word before. It's been a real pleasure over the last, I think, 3 months to be able to work closely. Already you've been involved in so many different aspects of our community, teaching in our religious school, teaching our teens, helping them connect more deeply to Israeli culture, teaching so many different groups of adults, our monthly Lunch and Learn, your section on Zoom, at Wednesday mornings at our Shulchan Aruch class, Tuesday Parsha class on Zoom, Shabbos Mincha, and now here on Shabbat morning. It's also wonderful to have you as another pastoral presence, sustaining people in all different moments and helping them connect in different moments in their lives. Bevakasha.
Thank you. And Shabbat Shalom, and a special shout out to the Kita Vav students that are in the room. I am not a sports person. I can count. Oh, okay. There are others. I can count on one hand the number of professional or college games I have attended. I did go to a lot of high school basketball when I was a high school teacher. But last Shabbat, my Aunt Celia from New York City came to Boston for Shabbat, was with me, and told me about an incredible event that took place here in Boston in September 2014. After Shabbat, I found a clip, and I encourage you to look for it after Shabbat as well, of an 18-minute ceremony where the Red Sox honored Yankee player Derek Jeter before he played his final game before retirement at Fenway Park. Does anybody remember this game? Was anybody at Fenway Park? Whoa, okay, so you can confirm or deny. I sat on the couch watching this event in tears. As one Boston athlete after the next came onto the field, offering accolades to Jeter for his contributions not only to the Yankees, but to the entire game of baseball. They honored his charity and foundation work, his sportsmanship, and his heart. We live in a culture where just last weekend, a brawl broke out after the University of Michigan football team tried to plant a flag on Ohio State. I'm from Michigan. Last month, we had violence in Amsterdam when the Israeli soccer team was playing. There is something about the psychology of being part of a team that can overtake our rational faculties. What makes the event like the one honoring Derek, that is what makes the event honoring Derek Jeter so remarkable. Because the fact is, a stadium full of Red Sox fans giving a standing ovation to the enemy is rare. Dare I say it, it's transcendent. What makes such a moment possible? We can find some insight in just one word, the very last word in this week's Parsha. We'll get there in a moment. Just to review, Parashat Vayetze is 2 full decades of Jacob's life. It begins as he flees Canaan because of his brother Esav and the trickery he had just done. Remember this? Okay. Jacob leaves Canaan alone and prepares to return with a full family, 11 children in tow. Despite the challenges of the switcheroo with his future wife, Jacob amassed great wealth at Laban's home, but he understood it was time to go, and he parted ways definitively with Laban and began his journey. If we had read the entire Parsha this morning, but Rabbi Lerner noted it in his introduction, we recall that the Parsha begins with Jacob's encounter with the dream of angels, and he names that place Beit El, the house of God. At the end of the Parsha, Jacob sees angels again, and he calls this place Machanaim. Now, we actually know what this word means, even if you don't. Machanaim, the ayim suffix is like two, shtayim. So there is a specifically two, And then the word machanaim, the first word is machaneh. We know this word deeply because many people are machaneh people, camp people. So Jacob names this place where he sees the angels as the place of two camps. Why? In a moment, I'll offer one midrashic interpretation, but first, I want to talk about camp. For Jacob, in the midst of travel, camp was likely the temporary resting place, as Rabbi Lerner mentioned. He needed to take a temporary nap. Travel is exhausting. But our own relationships to camp, maybe you rough it. Most of us think of camp and think of summer, where we, our children, or grandchildren enter a different reality. Camps have their own rhythms and cultures, meshugaat, and tradition. Everyone who doesn't go there just couldn't understand. Perhaps it's no mistake that the word machaneh, camp, has two overlapping root letters with the Hebrew word chen, which means favor or grace. Because when one is in one's camp, it can be really comfortable and rewarding. We can be with others as insiders, but when we're in our own camps too long, it can limit what we see. And this is what our tradition has to teach about the word machanaim, because when Yaakov arrives in this place, according to the Midrash Tanchuma, he saw two separate camps adjacent to one another. Why separate? Because according to the Midrash, angels are geographically and task limited. Angels that belong to Eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel, are only permitted to be in the land of Israel. And angels from outside of the land are only permitted to do the task, one task, of protecting Jacob outside of the land. So this place, Machanaim, is a threshold. It's a meeting point. It's a boundary. It is not the angels who are asked to go from one place to the next. It is Jacob, who next week will have his name changed to Yisrael, who is required to go from one place to the next. Jacob becomes a stand-in for every Jew. It's people, not angels, whom God asks to see other worlds. This is what Machanaim represents. Now, I kind of like being kind of angel-like sometimes. I like my own camp. I like my people. I tend to, most of the time, like my values. And sometimes it's really hard for me to see someone else's camp. Am I alone? I didn't think so. My dear Israeli friend, whom I actually met on a high school program, the summer program is no longer, it was called the Nisiya Institute. Does anybody know this program? It was half Israeli, half Americans. We went to kind of figure out what it meant to be in Israel together with the teens who just took their worlds for granted, and I'm in tears on the ascent to Jerusalem. We had to figure it out together. So I have a good friend named Yael Statman, whom I met when I was 17. Yael lives in Tel Aviv now. She grew up in Hoshaya, which is a religious yishuv up in the north of Israel. She's a school psychologist, she's a mother of 3, and a sister of 2 IDF soldiers on reserve duty. She also has become a poet, and she has published 2 books of beautiful poetry, all in Hebrew. And yesterday morning at 7 o'clock, I saw her post another piece that was published in Yediot Achronot, one of Israel's papers of record, that was published in their Musaf, it's their supplemental insert for the weekend. And I managed to get her on WhatsApp to confirm that she approved my translation of an excerpt of this poem that I will share with you now. Her poem is called Listen to This Womb. Womb, you caught my word, W-O-M-B. This is her poem. I thought a lot about the good side, and I was not comforted. The great trepidation of parenthood chases after me. Is it true that the moment that I became a mother to my children, I became a mother to all of the children in the world? Her poem goes on to illustrate her experience during the war. I wanted to choose all of the sides. They told me it's too complicated. I'm not proud of it, but I forced myself to pick a side. I chose the side of the children. They said that doesn't count. I chose the side of the dead, and I remained alone. I chose the side of the living. They told me to feed the living children, feed them when they return home with weapons at their sides, kiss them, let them promise that they will bring peace, and then send them off to battle. She employs metaphors of the void and darkness, choshech and tehom, that appear in the first verses of Genesis, and then concludes, I love them all. It's not a romantic statement. It's my womb that is speaking. For the side I didn't choose, for the children I didn't birth, nevertheless, it's my womb that is speaking. In the midst of it all, Yael writes about her body's capacity to feel. Incidentally, her husband's name is Jacob. Yael and her husband Jacob embody Machanaim. In this time of deep division and pain, we can make difficult choices. In fact, just this week, I began training on a curriculum that was developed by a subgroup of the Pardes Institute called Machloket, Dispute Matters. It was founded in 2018 by Rabbi Dr. Daniel Roth, an American who made Aliyah, who thought that 2018 was difficult and polarized. It was, but we're still living into it. And there are 3 tips from the curriculum that I'm just learning that I've been sitting with this week. 1, debate issues without attacking people. 2, check your motivation. Are you trying to understand, or are you trying to be right and win? And number 3, this is hard, consider that there actually might be more than one right answer. The oft-cited rabbinic pair of Hillel and Shammai disagreed about most things. Tradition teaches they still allowed their children to marry one another, and I used to think it was trite. Now, it sounds brave. We are not angels. We don't have to stay exclusively in one place. May we learn to be like Yaakov, who will become Yisrael, and figure out how to delicately, cautiously, but bravely traverse worlds. May we be blessed to have more magical moments like the one with Derek Jeter at Fenway, where each of us understands that the game on the field and in life is bigger than any one particular camp. Shabbat Shalom.